Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please name where you're based and share your story with us today.
Thanks very much for having me on the show. So my name's Landon Kahn. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and really proud to be here. So my story, I'm not so sure it's the most interesting story, but I was actually born in South Africa, and my family immigrated to Australia when I was about 1.5 to Sydney, and I have loved being in Australia ever since then. Couldn't even talk, but I've been on a journey which has got me to where I am today, which started as a young boy. My parents had a health food store in the early 90s, long before anyone knew what organic was or anything like that. And I used to work in that store and learned about things that were, more natural, or better for the environment, better for people. So from a young age, that was instilled into me. And then fast forward to 2006, I was traveling. I was in Florence, and this beautiful piazza, and in the middle of the piazza there was this bin. It was just overflowing with rubbish, and it was just a moment, an epiphany, where I was like, this is a really beautiful place, and the consumption of humanity is just making it not beautiful anymore. And that flicked a switch in me where I was like, I want to do something where I'm helping the environment, helping to leave the world in a better place than when it was when I got here. And when I came back, I joined a company called Today, which was one of the leading sustainability companies in Australia. It was actually a startup at the time, and sustainability was not what it is now, and helped grow that business in different forms to the leading commercial solar business in Australia. That in kind of peak COVID time, unfortunately went into administration, moved to another business in the space, helped grow that, facilitated a transaction there. And then for the last 1.5 years, I've been consulting, helping businesses in the net zero energy transition space to grow and with their strategy. I am a dad of a beautiful little girl, and a dog and a cat. And that is pretty much about me, but I'm very passionate about the environment and, as I said, leaving the world in a better place, and that is also related to diversity too.
Fantastic. Well, it's wonderful to know that I'm speaking to a brother from the continent. I am from Zimbabwe, and it always surprises me the number of guests that I meet who are from our part of the world. So this is awesome. So, how do you address and incorporate diversity within the energy sector, especially in leadership and decision-making roles?
Yeah, really good question. And generally, the energy sector is heavily male-based. Diversity is pretty poor, and throughout the time at the first business that I was at, I would say as we grew, diversity became more and more important, and it was heavily male based. But it wasn't just diversity in male or female, but in gender, but in also sort of background, ethnicity, religious, any sort of diversity, because it was the belief within that business that the more diversity that you have, the more creativity, the more different schools of thought, and that will help the business and just have a more vibrant culture. And so it was the first thing was saying, okay, this is something that we want to change. So that for me is the first thing within the energy sector. And nowadays, there definitely is more of kind of a drive for improved diversity. But in terms of kind of leadership, there was an example that we had. There was a woman who joined us as an engineer, and she joined as a junior STEM engineer. And within 8 months, she was the head of the department. And then within about 2 years, she was general manager of the entire operations of the company. Wow. So yeah, that was a pretty fast progression, and she was one of the only sort of senior leaders within the industry that were female at that time. Yeah. And really, how we kind of changing. So the first thing was, I said, acknowledgement. Then the second thing was data. So we started, actually look at the diversity of the business.
Yes.
And then when we were hiring, look at the data of, okay, how many people applied were male, female, what other sort of diversity metrics we were looking at.
Right.
And then once we had that data, we could then start to, well, we've got females within the business, and we started then looking to build relationships. So one of the challenges, particularly in engineering-based roles in the energy industry, is if you put a job up, there might be 50 applicants, and 40, 45, even 48 might be male.
Yeah.
So finding good female candidates is quite difficult. And so what we started doing was building relationships with different people in the space, and searching out people that may be a good employee in the future, but we didn't necessarily have a role for them then, and effectively building relationships and databases of potential candidates that would improve our diversity. And so when we did have a role, it wasn't hoping and waiting for those people to come to us. It was proactive and saying, hey, person X, person Y, we've been chatting to you for a little while. We think we've got a role that would be really suited for you.
Right.
Have a look and let us know if you'd like to apply. And so that served as a way to significantly increase the number of female candidates that we had. And definitely helped to improve diversity in the hiring process, and that's kind of the key change that we made there. And so those things, so acknowledgement, data, and then building relationships or database of people that would be suitable in the future.
Yes.
The 3 key strategies.
So let's talk a little bit about net zero's goals. What are some of the key challenges businesses face in achieving net zero goals, and how do you guide them through these challenges?
Yeah, good question. So I think there's a lot of challenges. think businesses and the general populace think it will be easier than it is going to be. And so I'd probably say there's 3 key challenges in talking to businesses. One is where to start. It's easy to say we want to go towards net zero, but how do you actually start that process? Then once you decide you want to start, the next challenge is how do you actually quantify? Where are you now, and what is your process, and what level and what time frame on net zero.
Right.
And then the third kind of challenge is what actual goals to set. What are you going to do, and how are you going to achieve it? And so those challenges are a process, and it's kind of cascading and waterfalling down in terms of how to help businesses on that path. I would say the building of a benchmark is really the kind of first process, and that helps to do the where to start and how to quantify. Is you build a benchmark, and there's a lot of solutions out there to do that these days. That's relatively simple.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, then it's easier to say, okay, well this is the makeup of our emissions, and this is realistically do in the short, medium, long term, and then setting goals according to that.
Okay. So how does Soul Sombra take a customized approach to help businesses optimize, innovate, and elevate in the context of sustainability and net zero?
Pretty much the majority of what we do is customized in terms of every client that we work with is different. And so it really starts from a discovery process. So we'll sit with a potential client and just understand about their business. What are their challenges? What are their opportunities? What are the trends that they see? Do they have any certain weaknesses that they want to work on? And understand that about the business. And once understood that, it's kind of asking the right questions there. And then it's building an approach that, okay, well, we can help you with X, Y, and Z, your challenges or these opportunities. And it's working very closely with them. And, some of the things that we do is it's about challenging them. So it's often easy to be caught in your own thoughts or your own path, set path that may not be the best. So we like to challenge our clients in a very respectful way, and also asking the right questions through that sort of consultation process that can help change their thinking or steer their thinking in the right way, just to sort of motivate different thinking if that needs to be done.
So how do diverse perspectives within your team contribute to developing effective business strategies for your clients?
So kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about, at the previous businesses that I was in, where we decided diversity was important from a strategic point of view, because it brings in creative thinking. So I'd echo that again. So having diverse backgrounds, thinking, perspectives is the key to innovation. So that's one of the most important things for us. And then being able to challenge bias too. So we're all subject to bias. That's just part of human nature. And so bringing those diverse perspectives in helps to call out that. We have very open policy of calling out bias. And then bringing that into strategy generation as well. So being able to look at things in a diverse way from different angles, that helps to generate stronger strategy.
Okay. So, what complexities do businesses typically face in energy transition, and how do your teams assist in navigating these complexities?
So I'd say similar to the net zero, where people go, okay, yeah, we need to transition away from fossil fuels to more renewable, sustainable energy. It seems simple, but it can be a little bit more challenging to get to true 100% renewables. And so, kind of where it's come from and where it is now. So energy was almost irrelevant, 10 years ago, in terms of it just wasn't a big consideration for most businesses. It was relatively cheap, and it was just a small expense line item.
Right.
That has changed significantly because of the increase in costs of electricity. And then on top of that, the sustainability side of things is making businesses change their thinking. And then finally, you've got operational security for some businesses. If they have there's a brownout, blackout, and they can't
Operate.
work,
Yeah.
manufacture, whatever it is that they do, there's obviously a big implication there. So those three things have shifted energy from being not important to pretty important in the kind of list of operational priorities. And then effectively, it's looking at what percentage of energy, what percentage of energy creates your emissions. What percentage of your emissions is from your energy, rather, which is normally sort of 30 to 50%.
Okay.
And so that's a pretty big portion of your emissions to transition, and then working with them. Okay, well, this would be the approach. It's first look at what can you do with on-site generation. So solar power as an example. How do you procure energy from your retailer? Look at that, and just kind of taking a step-by-step approach to help that transition to 100% renewables.
Wow. So, how do you leverage your global network of fractional executives to drive businesses forward, particularly in the realm of sustainability and energy transition?
So I'd say that the first thing that's really important in leveraging it is diversity. So the network is global, so it's bringing people from different backgrounds, location, expertise, skills. So being able to leverage diversity is the kind of first benefit that we have. And then it's around talking with my clients and understanding again, their challenges, and what help they need, and then the connections that I've got, expanding or building on those connections, so that once there is a challenge or there's an opportunity arises where a client says, look, we're looking to do X, Y, or Z, but we're not really sure the right approach, we can then say, okay, we know a couple of people that would be really well suited to help on this project, and can engage with them and then see if it's the right fit and then make that connection. That's generally the approach that we would take, and it's leveraging both sides of the relationship in terms of bringing talent to our clients, and bringing opportunities to my network.
Okay. So can you discuss the role of business advisory and executive coaching in supporting businesses through their strategic objectives?
So the first kind of thing I'd say is the way that we work is fairly customized. So we don't have a set, this is the coaching that we do, or this is the sort of advisory that we do. Every human is different. So we'll look at the person, and understand, their motivations, their challenges, and work with them on, okay, what are the key areas that they need coaching on or advisory work on, and then set some goals and objectives around that. And then having the external view to be able to, keep them accountable and give them different guidance to their own sort of thinking is an important part of what we bring in. And I guess, that's the approach with management consultancy, is bringing the external expertise, guidance to your business. And that's why there's a lot of management consultants around, because having that external view is often, very positive, coming back to sort of, the bias that I mentioned before.
Yes.
So that's really the key thing, is the objectivity, the expertise and experience, and then having support. So a lot of the coaching that we would do is one-on-one coaching with directors, CEOs, and there's daily challenges, and it's often can be a lonely place.
Yes.
And so bringing that support to work through some of those challenges or provide a different perspective is also kind of
one way.
Yeah.
So how do you encourage and support businesses that are initially hesitant to adapt sustainability practices and net zero strategies?
So the first thing is, if it doesn't make financial sense, businesses won't do it. As much as I would love to believe, from a capitalism point of view, we're all intrinsically motivated to do better for the environment or leave the world in a better place. Capitalism is economically motivated, so it needs to make financial sense. So then it's about aligning net zero or sustainability with business goals. Profitability is generally the number one there. And so then there might be other goals that you could align it to as well. And then exploring how net zero or sustainability can help improve or achieve those. And so an example would be so Coles, Woolworths, Aldi's, Australian supermarkets, their scope 3 emissions, so that's emissions of their supply chain. That's generally more than 90% of their total emissions is not actually theirs, it's their supply chain. And so they're forcing their supply chains to reduce their emissions because they've made commitments about their emissions. And so this comes back to the kind of the financial motivation. You may have a small manufacturer of marshmallows, and they've been doing that for 20 years. They don't really care about the environment. They're focused on making great marshmallows. And without that motivative of Coles, Woolworths, and Aldi saying, well, if you don't reduce your emissions, we're not going to buy for you. So it has a financial impact. They may not be motivated to do anything, but with that motivation, they'll go, okay, we need to do something and make a change when they may not have done that in the first place. Having said that, there are plenty of businesses, small businesses out there that are highly motivated to make changes without that sort of financial pressure or motivation. For the majority of businesses, it comes down to dollars and cents.
It does. So based on your experience, what future trends do you foresee in the net zero and energy transition space? And how should businesses prepare for these changes?
So I'd say there's probably 5 things that are going to be trends over the coming years. So it already is, but renewables. But the growth in renewables is going to continue to be exponential, particularly utility scale and commercial and industrial. So in Australia, we've got pretty much the most advanced residential market in the world, but on a utility and commercial level, we're quite behind certain countries. So that would be the first thing. Then certainly aligned to that is electrification, and basically electrifying everything, cars, homes, transport. So that will be a big one. Then policy is going to be a big driver. And so an example of that is not that long ago, the Victorian government banned gas in new developments, forcing energy transition. Next would be energy storage. So that links into kind of 1 and 2, but the development there and the need for having dispatchable power is going to be really, really important.
Right.
Finally, this is more longer term, but kind of once we're well progressed on that path towards net zero, shift will be towards circular economy. So everything, not everything, but a lot of what we do now is linear. We dig it up, turn it into something else, use it, and then throw away. And so that's in the way that we live to having a circular approach to consumption.
Okay. So my last question for you is around you as an angel investor. In your role as an angel investor, particularly in the context of net zero and energy transition, can you elaborate on your investment thesis? And how do you decide on the startup projects to invest in that align with your principles and goals? What are the major, factors that you take into consideration as an investor?
Yeah, good question. So it's not just net zero and energy transition. So my thesis is broader to climate and sustainability. And I'm not sure if you dropped out there or not, but
No, I'm here. I would love to capture this segment with you speaking to camera for my community.
Okay, sorry. Oh, good. All right. So yeah, as I was saying, my thesis is broader than net zero. It is climate and sustainability. And it's about having a meaningful impact on the world that we live in. So often investment in this space is based on the sustainable development, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. For me, it's not 100% aligned to those, but they form part of it. And so that's the first thing: is do I identify with the mission of this business, and is the change that it's going to make material and move the needle on sustainability? So for example, emissions reduction. And then the next kind of, if it ticks that, then the next is, can it move the needle in terms of its own growth and delivering a return to myself? And if it ticks both of those, then for me, one of the key things is the team and diversity. And that's something I've worked on quite a bit over the last sort of 18 months. And I've gotten portfolio to around 35% of the companies that I've invested in have at least one female co-founder. And my goal is to be 50-50 by the end of this year, and then looking to maintain that in the long term, which I'm somewhat proud of. I think there's a lot of venture firms that have really abysmal diversity in their portfolios. I'm definitely not saying I'm anywhere near the best. There's certainly some that invest exclusively, for example, in women businesses. But also, again, for me, diversity is not just about the gender side of things. It's also backgrounds as well. So one of the things I also look at is do they have a founder that's an immigrant in the team as well?
Yes, fantastic. Well, Landon, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your wisdom with us today. It's great to meet somebody who's on a mission to leave the planet a better place than we found it. And I'm pretty sure the companies you're investing in will go into the world and make a big difference. Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you very, very much, and really enjoyed it. Some great questions, and looking forward to seeing the work that you do as well, expanding diversity with the Diversity Connector.
Fantastic. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you voices and stories from people from all over the world to uplift, inspire, energize you with ideas. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Thanks again, Landon.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap, everybody. on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay connected.